25 years of MakeMyTrip and it's history. New age Indian business can go and do this.
10 billion gross revenue run rate, 1 billion revenue run rate, probably the most profitable, I think, internet company in the country. Not just healthy and good on the other side, but in a much, much better position. The last 12 months have been our best ever.
We were the among the first internet companies in the US, right? It was a successful IPO.
And one of the very few companies, no?
I think just because of where India is, how we are poised, how travel is taking off, we're seeing all of that. I bet your flight this morning was packed and every hotel is packed and everything else. People are traveling a lot, whether for business or for leisure, and we are obviously helping that.
It's been really exciting 25 years. Roller coaster for sure. It had its own sort of hiccups along the way. Can't not be, because it's been an entrepreneurial journey, and you know what entrepreneurial journey is as well, right?
"25 years of MakeMyTrip and it's history. Of course, in the last 1 year, Deep, we have seen a lot of IPOs and everything happening. But to me, the penultimate of what was the first establishing, wo hota na jhanda gada, that to me was MakeMyTrip. How does it feel today?
Shraddha, it feels amazing. It firstly doesn't feel like 25. It just feels like a time blur. It's moved so fast. Like if someone says 25, that's a lifetime, right? But couldn't have asked for a better 25 in a sense. So great to come out, not just, healthy and good on the other side, but in a much, much better position. So I think the best part of this 25 is that the last 25 months, or dare I say the last 12 months, have been our best ever. We do genuinely believe that the best is yet to come because of not just MakeMyTrip. I think just because of where India is, how we are poised, how travel is taking off, we're seeing all of that. I bet your flight this morning was packed and every hotel is packed and everything else. People are traveling a lot, whether for business or for leisure, and we are obviously helping that. And I think the company is just in a much better position in terms of the way we are structured, ready to take off, embracing new technologies. So 25 and energized.
Rajesh?
Yeah, no, it's been, like Deep said, it's been really exciting 25 years. Roller coaster for sure. Like, it had its own sort of hiccups along the way. Can't not be, because, it's been an entrepreneurial journey, and you know what entrepreneurial journey is as well, right? So, and different phases, different sort of challenges. First 5 years were very, very startup and almost like a survival thing. And next phase was high growth phase, and and then you mentioned about IPO in the US was clearly the high point from that point of view.
Yeah.
But now when you look back, maybe it was too early that we listed at that point in time. But when we listed in US, it was about 10 years already, and in 10 years from an early stage investor standpoint was a sort of lot of time from their perspective as well. But it worked out quite well. And after that also, it gave us some capital, and we started growing and kept building the business, new services, new products, and so on. And then along the way that, as you were scaling up your business, the India started to really happen. And back in the days, and early days of MakeMyTrip, the digital ecosystem was hardly there. It really did not exist at that point in time. So then, when that started to happen, the smartphones, the overall bandwidth, really the pillars of the digital ecosystem started to sort of grow and make sort of help the companies. That sort of fueled the growth phase for the company as well. And then a lot of capital, came into the industry. We had market dynamics, 2016, and when we ended up sort of having another big milestone for the company. I don't think, admittedly, to be honest, that we were ready for such a big sort of merger, if you will, right? We were a decent sized company, but we were definitely not ready for a big acquisition at that point in time. But the circumstances sort of forced us to do it, or market forces forced us to do it, and then we had to make that work. There was like really hard work for 2-3 years for us to be able to make sure that the GoIBibo works out well, the RedBus works out well, the MakeMyTrip, the overall, sort of strategy.
I want us to talk about that.
Yeah, we should talk about that, right? So that was another phase. And then the COVID happened. And then a lot of the sort of rebuilding of the business happened. Maybe a lot of the work happened for future strategy as well. And then as we came out of it, we emerged as more stronger, as Deep was pointing out, right? So it feels great because it's been a fun ride. But it feels even more exciting because India is also now at a cusp of next wave of growth. Literally, just from an overall economy standpoint, and which effectively means that we are in good position. Reached a particular size and scale. Have our balance sheet which is stronger than ever before, and looks like we are also sort of nicely poised for us to take it to the next level.
Take us through, what does it actually take to build a business like this?
I think, at the core of it, maybe two very big things, and I think one you sort of mentioned. I think it's got to be the DNA of the organization. And two, I think we were lucky enough that Deep obviously set the stage for it. But, me or let's say the other two co-founders, Keyur and Sachin, and the larger and the team. Because the good thing about MakeMyTrip, by the way, was against, one of the things that deeply believed in it. As we were scaling up the business, we were bringing in a lot more, sort of complementary skills into the business, and that obviously helps you then to scale the business. But I think fundamentally it was to do with the long-term thinking, that we were not necessarily going to give up. Having survived the first 5 years, we were just not necessarily give up, and we would build the business in the right manner. Of course, you have to, along the way, there will be market forces, market dynamics, competition activity, the various things will come in.
Yeah.
You will have to deal with it. But would we be, sort of willing to change the DNA of the organization? Perhaps not, right? The way, because that was driven from the fact that the core values of, building the business in the right way. Let me just give you one example, very important, since you mentioned about US listing being, one of the proud moments. Yes, it was a milestone, it was a high point, very proud moment for us as well. But, when this conversation was happening, even at the board level, a lot of people, in fact, we got the thumbs up from the investors, early stage investors, and saying, you guys can definitely go to US, because they were all worried about, since you mentioned about clean companies and the compliances, they were all otherwise would be worried about that the compliance burden in the US could be very, very heavy. And also the corporate governance norms or the corporate governance level that you will have to sort of operate with could be very different in the US. And let me tell you, that was the only thing that we were not worried about. We were absolutely worried about, only because the day they set up this company, from that day, the level of corporate governance was very high.
Yeah.
We used to have, by the way, board, very early age, when we used to have independent directors on our board, where the concept was not even, sort of well known at that point in time for a private company, right? Early stage private company, when do you have independent boards?
Yeah.
And the driver for us was to actually that we should also have someone who knows better than us, and we will be able to brainstorm and bounce off our strategies, etc. with them as well. So we weren't really bothered about corporate governance, because we were professional and we wanted to run it in a very professional. And I think maybe that also has to do with some experience that we brought, before MakeMyTrip happened, right? Because Deep was a professional, senior professional, from a different lens, getting into entrepreneurship. One could also say there was an opportunity cost, but we were like 7-8 years of work-ex after doing our, sort of academics, if you will. I worked with Aptech for 5 years. Before that, I worked with Volta. So, I was also able to bring that corporate, sort of structure thinking and some experience behind it. But I think it has got to do with how you built up from value standpoint, in terms of just how do you want to sort of build the clean business and build the business in the right way. I think some of those things have helped. And then along the way, if you bring in more talent, which is more, sort of complementary, which is required to scale up the business at the right point in time. And I guess, before the conversation, you were thinking about it, is the Deep's ability to let go, and possibly, and I've learned a lot from him on that particular aspect, actually hire better than your own, your own abilities. So never feel insecure about anything, right? At the end of the day, just very fundamentally. I think some of those things that have helped.
We are celebrating 25 years of Make My Trip. So we can say that the DNA was right, long-term thinking. As a founder and as a solo founder, when you started, take us through that. Second is, I think as a country, if there is one thing that we need to celebrate, one entrepreneur in terms of letting go, you are the one. And now today you have a phenomenal CEO sitting next to you. We celebrate in US, we talk about in Silicon Valley that, be it Google founders and all that. There's so much of celebration when we talk about them, but you've done that in India. Take us through that also.
Where are you coming from?
Yeah.
What is your own background? One is, of course, the values, which we have to all thank our parents for giving us those values. But the corporate, like where you worked, your work experience, I worked with two really good, high governance, quality companies. It was ABN AMRO Bank here, Banking Anyways like that, phenomenal bosses, both Ramesh Sopti, Sohail Chandra, just learned so much from them. And then in G Capital, I got the opportunity to work with someone like Pramod Bhasin and a whole host of other amazing people. I saw them at work. Nitin Gupta, who was my immediate boss when I was hired, Raman Roy, and people who were like really inspirational guys. And they went on to do phenomenal things. And you could learn a lot just being, I always say you learn the most by osmosis, which is be in the same room. So even today, or at least I think Rajesh does that too, whenever we have our reviews, we invite a lot of the young folks into the room. And the reason is very simple. A, you have to trust everyone who works with you. So whatever you're discussing, I mean, if people could copy that, then by now many people would have done better than us. So obviously it's much more than that. B, the real reason is you don't know which young kid is going to get turned on that in that room, listening to some of the stuff and say, oh my God, this is exciting. So next time it's driving him or her to do something better. Because I remember that happening to me many times in my early phases of my career by just being in the room and being excited about being there because I'm getting a chance to be in the same space for 2-3 hours as the CEO who's locking horns with product people and tech people and saying, nahi, ye nahi chahiye, or aise kare, or wo kare, and they're giving it back. So many things are at play, Shraddha. Firstly, the culture that you're telling people, oh, we are an open culture, they're seeing it. So you can sing your culture. You can tell everyone we are an open culture. You are only an open culture if they can feel that. So if they see an argument, a healthy argument where a young product manager can be making her own point of view and the CEO is listening. No one less than CEO is actually listening. Founders are listening and buying that point. And it's a good, healthy debate or giving it back. And it's a nice, healthy debate. And you walk out as friends, you put an arm around the person and you're saying like, listen, yeah, cool. We had that argument. It's over. But we came up with a better system. Then they say, wow, this is the kind. And good people want to work for those kind of companies. Yes. That's the reality. They're saying, listen, I can do a lot. But most of the time I get stuck in a company where my boss thinks I'm an idiot. Or it's beyond my rank to make these points. And that's horrible because how will you get the best? Our people who will give us our best inputs are the ones closest to customer, which fundamentally means they're young people.
Yeah.
We can't even think. We think like 20-year-olds only if I put myself in the shoes of my kids. But I can't directly think. I can't think like a 30-year-old because I'm a 50-year-old. So it's not going to happen. 55-year-old, sorry. So it's not going to happen, right? It's only going to happen if we entrust our marketing and product people out there, our customer insight people. Now we have many specialist terms who are picking up all those insights, but we're listening to them.
Yes.
Not foisting our own opinion, saying, हाँ ये सब कर दिया, but you know what? होता तो ऐसे ही है, करना तो ऐसे ही है. That's not our culture, never been. So that's the reason we do that. Now I'll come to the actual, I guess, the question. So setting up, I never thought we'll be sitting here 25 years down the line. I didn't even, none of that. To be very honest, the setup was simply because the internet was happening. It was changing life. And I wanted to do something about it. And a big company I was in was not ready to do something about it. And I said, the only way to crack this is to do it yourself. What will move online first? Things we are doing on the phone. Cut back to 99, 2000. Online stockbroking on the phone, online travel on the phone and stockbroking on the phone. So take it online because you never met your broker, maybe on Diwali. You never met your travel agent. You spoke. And then the runner came, took your check and all. Who knew this digital revolution will happen in this way, where we'll be making payments like by 2 clicks on our phone? But I think you take it a step. So that was my reason. I always say I was foolish enough to start alone. I was lucky enough to find some great guys along the way. One of them who's sitting next to me, two other guys, but many, many good people. But obviously there's a limit on how many co-founders you can make. But I was smart only to hold on to them. So I can only take credit for that, because if you get talent, you get people who are very passionate about your company, as passionate as you are, then listen, you're stupid if you don't want to lock them in, give them skin in the game one way or the other. So they also feel, and I think it's always, for good people, it's more than the money they make. It's always about how they feel.
Yeah.
So they've got to feel like they're truly owners of the business. And we make many people in the company feel like that by allowing them to go ahead, do what you want, make some mistakes, it's fine, take us along, tell us what you're doing. But if you stop doing that, we'll stop being entrepreneurial. So we have a lot of young folks who are very empowered to go ahead and build new products. Like right now, our chief product officer, a fantastic guy, he's dreaming of new stuff all the time with his team, and they're building it. Obviously, they come for approval to Rajesh. Earlier, I would work closely with. They come for approval, but Rajesh, I know 8 out of 10 will, quiz them, this, that, but eventually say, go do it. Only then will we know we'll fail.
Yeah.
We'll try 5, we'll fail 2, and hopefully 3 will work. So it's always like a law of averages kind of thing. If you succeed more often than you fail, you'll come up on top. But if you don't try, then nothing's going to happen. Then we're going to stagnate. So I think the approach was also one step at a time. First 5 years were very, very, very tough, but very, very, very satisfying, because you came out of it. It was survival. First 5 years was pure survival. He knows those days. I thought we had 2 months, but he was the CFO. He says, no, we had 1 month of rent and payroll. So it was scary times. But something kept one going. I think it's a combo of left brain, right brain. Left brain is telling you numbers are moving in the right direction. Right brain is telling you, the gut instinct, like, yeah, be creative, find innovative ways. We can do it. And again, 1 month at a time, 1 month at a time. So the tough times, I think, got over because you had a couple of people. We had this close team. We could bounce ideas off and share the burden. As they say very often, if you can talk about your pain with someone, half the pain anyway goes away. So I think that was happening without realizing it. And we were also having fun. Despite working, Mr. Narayan Murthy will be very proud, I think 100-hour weeks, like flat out. So when people say they don't want to work 70 hours in their 20s, I said, seriously? Like, you're never going to build something of your own. There was no work-life balance. I mean, none. And you know that, Shraddha. There's none whatsoever in the early days. And it's okay. There's a time to work hard, and then it gets better and better because you have other people. If you let go, some people still don't let go. That's okay. But I think it comes down to what you want to do. I think we got much more form and structure around 2005. We got VC money all over again. Till that time, it was angel money, our money, literally hand to mouth. Safe Partners, which is now called Elevation, and they've been just the best investors ever. 2005. 2006, we split the round between Helion and Sierra because we liked them both. And we don't know how to say no to good people. They're both lovely guys. And the Sierra gentleman is still on our board as an independent from 2006.
Wow.
So sold out an IPO 2010, and we want him as an independent till 2025. So Tim Guleri is sitting in the valley is there. And then Tiger came in 2007 and 8. And then we IPO'd in 2010, which you know. So I think after that, there was a lot more structure to it. And yes, I think around that time, when you IPO, I think you make a very big decision, which I hope people think long and hard about. Like, why do you want to IPO? Because IPO is actually just base camp. IPO is a reset to go much further.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to build a much bigger business, then you should not IPO. It's okay. You should sell your company if you want to liquid, or you should keep running a company which is privately owned. Sometimes that's great for some people, and some folks love that. That's okay. Our dreams were bigger. We needed external capital. You take external capital means you have to give them a return. It's very simple. If you have to give them a return in that 4, 5, 7-year horizon, then you'll do whatever needs to be done. If you've sold a IPO dream to your people and you've given them pieces of paper called stock options, and you can't give them a return, then it's a worthless people.
Yeah.
So I think you have to be very careful and mindful about the verbal and formal promises. Formal always, but even the verbal promises that you make, and you got to live up to them because, I think that's what we're all about, is our word and our integrity. And so then form and structure. So we were very clear कि अभी तो बहुत बड़ा business बनाना है. So by that time we were clear कि IPO के बाद बड़ा बनाना है. Till that time, honestly, I mean, there was a moment, and I've spoken about this a bit, where just before SAFE came in, we got an offer. We were down and out. We were ready to sell. And there was a company called Zuji, which was half Travelocity and half Abacus. And they had come to meet us, and someone had told, they wanted to buy the company. And internally we discussed, we were 55% management held, and there was no VC. There were angels, like Rajesh had angel funded us, a few others had angel funded us. That if we get 10 million, we'll sell the company. $10 million then, and I guess the dollar was 48 rupees. And I went into that meeting, and for some reason I said, like a good Punjabi, we'll host you for lunch. And then I realized we don't even have that too much money. So we went to a small restaurant called Waves near Ajini, near our office, and we said we'll do the meeting there. And for some reason, the other guys didn't come along. But I told them I'm going for this meeting, and this is the deal. And we had agreed, if it's 10 million, we'll take the offer, and we'll all make a few millions, and we'll be fine. We'll figure out what to do. And we're still very young, like early 30s. Yeah. And these guys started and went up to 7.5, I think maybe 7.5, 8. And it got stuck. I said, thank you very much, but no thank you. Walked back, ran back. And these guys, what happened? And they knew on my face, they were relieved that we didn't get the number and we didn't sell. I was relieved that they didn't get to 10. So in your gut, you knew you actually didn't want to, but you were almost forced to. So I guess luck's got to be with you too. Was it 10? We might have sold out. And I think I would have felt more miserable than ever possible seeing other companies, build something which was our rightful place. So my big lesson to entrepreneurs who are onto something is push it, make it bigger. You don't realize what one can do, and just don't sell out or don't shut down too early, because who knows what can come out of it. If you're having fun, you're making ends meet, and broadly like that's okay, then defer your gratification. It'll be worth it.
MakeMyTrip has built a very real, sustainable, long-term, and that's what you said, and that's why you also did IPO, thinking long-term. Do you think as an entrepreneur, you got as much celebration as a lot of entrepreneurs in the last 15 years? And did that matter, or it didn't matter at all?
Yeah, I honestly, I think we got a lot when we didn't deserve it. And I don't think this metric even matters. Like most of the time, I'm like, our head of comms is saying, do this interview. And I'm saying, really, I don't think we need to do it. Like, why? Like, I will always ask 5 times, do we really need to do it? Except chatting with you, which is very different. But
it didn't matter, you're saying.
I don't think so, because one has got it. If you had never got it, I think it matters because you also need it as a B2C business. It's also important because it helps you, I think, with getting talent. So you need a profile, but I think we'd got enough. So like whether someone's getting more or less, I mean, honestly.
Just the celebration of businesses, which would be like, because I
think we celebrated once a big one, which was, so we celebrated every day between 2001 and 2005, that every month that we are surviving. We really celebrated with a bottle of cheap alcohol on a chat on a Barsati where one of my colleagues stayed. That's what we would do, and then plan for the next month. But the real celebration, I guess, the IPO was a big celebration. We felt very good. But right after that, we reminded ourselves, come down to earth. This is not real. Ye momentary tha, ho gaya. Because otherwise you'll keep floating. What is it? At the end of the day, it's a financial milestone. It hasn't fundamentally changed anything. Except you've raised capital. Now, in fact, the kind of pressure it puts. So 8 years or maybe 9 years after that, flat out till COVID, Rajesh and I think out of the 36 quarters, at least both of us went for at least 32 quarters. He probably went for all 36. I went for 34 quarters for a roadshow. Grueling 1 week. There is no joy. Even in the IPO, they say, oh, wow, it's really fashion, ye, wo, and all that. You fly a private jet, the bankers make you do that nonsense. It is very, very painful. It is grueling. Morning to night, you're speaking, you're just talking the same thing, and then you catch a flight late night, you sleep 4 hours, you wake up in another city the next morning and you do the whole routine again. We did it for 10 days. On the weekend, they said, what do you want to do? I think we both said we want to sleep. We just wanted to sleep because you're so exhausted. So I don't think there's any great joy in all of that. The next celebration is, well, 25 years today. So I think
it's
in
a
the middle,
huge one. No, why I'm asking you this question is also
the press
because,
bit doesn't matter.
yeah,
Honestly, it
because
doesn't
a
matter.
lot of, I somehow see a lot of entrepreneurs lose that perspective, but you've had it. Take us through your mind, inside your head, because as entrepreneurs, we also start, among other things, it's our own creation. There is that little bit of
Sure.
ego or whatever you may call it.
Sure. Yeah, no, and only an entrepreneur will ask this. So it's a great, I don't think I've ever been asked this actually. And I have thought about it. So I think, firstly, you can, okay, why do you want to? You have to want to. Some people don't want to. I wanted to because I wanted to do other things. So for me, it's that old way of 25 years of life of this next phase, next phase. So at 50, I wanted to now just do other stuff, more around impact and giving back and just the right thing, because I thought I'd got more than I ever expected, deserved, blah, blah, blah. Little spiritual and that. And I said, why not? But I could even dream to think like this because you have someone who'll run the company.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, if Rajesh wasn't there and he was already CEO, so he and I were doing actually very similar stuff for a few years. He had moved from CFO, CEO, he was running the company. There were a few group companies, so I was group CEO, then executive chairman. We were just playing with some titles, but we were doing very similar stuff, luckily not stepping on each other's toes. And I could therefore have that luxury to dream like that because I knew it's in very safe hands and probably better. As you know, we've seen, I always say I should quit earlier because we've done better ever since. So I think I could do that. I wanted to, I genuinely wanted to do more, and it didn't bother me that, no, I'm not like that. Like, yeah, of course, MakeMyTrip is still definitely my baby, but it's also a baby for many other people. And I'm not going anywhere. I'm still very, very invested in, and I will stay like that till we're doing this. Yeah, if tomorrow Rajesh also doesn't want to run it, then I think we have a real problem. We'll have to figure out what to do. But right now he does, and he's doing it, so it's great. I think I just want, my other passions were more important for me. Also, I think COVID, like for everyone, was a big time to reflect. It was a huge time for me to reflect that, listen, time is kind of running out, and 50 is one of those things. So he didn't let me do it at 50. So then COVID came in the middle. And then finally one did it at 53, which is fine.
Having a founder who has brand visibility, love, and dare coming and having an equal relationship and standing out the way you stand out, what does it mean to be with a founder like that, celebrity founder, and make your own place in the organization?
Yeah, no, interesting question, I have to say, because I've never thought it from that lens ever. I'll tell you why. The journey started way back early, and Deep obviously set it up and he shared that story. But how it maybe happened or how it began, so when I met him for the first time, when he was just looking to hire a CFO at that point in time, part of his management team, he had hired a couple of other guys as well who eventually also became co-founders. I think I don't know what to in hindsight say, but I think maybe it was meant to be, because I quite enjoyed and I quite liked my first interaction itself. So if I had to, and it was not necessarily that we were setting up or Deep was setting up straight from college, and we were sort of pals or friends, etc. We met at MakeMyTrip, right? I was just. The only thing that was maybe at the core of it common was maybe among other things that we realized later, but for my desire to also be part of startup, to be part of the journey, which is sort of building from scratch.
Yeah.
Because I had my corporate life as well in the past, right? So I had about 7, 8 years of experience, and I was sort of ready to, call it maybe risk appetite as well, and there would be opportunity cost, etc. But I was sort of ready to do that. But after meeting him, I enjoyed a lot, and I thought it'll be great to work with him. MakeMyTrip was still to happen. It wasn't really MakeMyTrip at that point in time. It was basically working with him at that point in time, and that is how it started. And and many people, and you would realize that because practically you've been the entrepreneur. Once you are in it, frankly, and if you have the DNA of working with complete ownership, whether you have an equity ownership or you don't have the equity ownership, then it is all about portfolio division. Everyone is doing everything, right, at that point in time, literally, and I remember back in the days we used to be in, Okhla phase 1 when we were really struggling, when the e-bookers happened. I'd literally on the terrace in the porter cabin, 4 of us or 5 of us sitting in that cabin where the DG used to be burning fuel. Literally, you step out and you would be, sort of inhaling that fume. And sitting in front of it and doing everything possible. I mean, the biggest thing at that point in time that we were trying to raise more capital because we were just trying to survive. And capital meaning whatever little one gets, 5 lakh, 10 lakh, jo bhi mil jaye.
Aaj wala capital nahi.
Forget about that. Like, chota capital. Like, jo mil jaye.
Baby capital.
Jo mil jaye, literally. Just to survive. So, when you start like that, although Deep has a lot of aura around it and a lot of this thing, but when people see it from outside and when we work together, it is not that difficult, right? So it wasn't that because he was a brand, he was a, sort of a public figure and all of that. In fact, we all used to love it because, not only me and Kayur and Sachin working together in the larger team, that, there is Deep for us to do that job. And, we can continue to keep sort of
but it's a very important
thing. They actually tease me and trouble me a lot because every time we're at an airport or anywhere else, and I know people and I enjoy meeting people, so they'll roll their eyes up like, listen, you can't go anywhere without basically meeting someone or the other. So
absolutely. Not only in India, it'll happen internationally as well. So everywhere, then you'll have someone who would know.
It's so important, this conversation, because a lot of partnerships, a lot of relationships fall because of this. And somewhere I just don't know why we don't discuss this. This to me, MakeMyTrip is a very successful partnership.
It is.
And it takes both ways like any relationship.
Very well put, actually.
Absolutely.
You're so right. And I think it's about clear definition of roles. You don't have to spell them out. I think it's naturally what you're comfortable with. So I say it all the time. If I had the stamina, the energy to do another startup, or what's the right way of doing it, I would start with 2. Like me and one more person. I think that's the right number with complementary skills. So if I brought the very same skills to the table, maybe the other person then will be the tech person who will bring the tech skills. But so in our kind of business, it's everything tech and everything business. And, so I think, and some skills can be hired, of course, but these 2 I think would be good. We're probably on our 10th CTO and knock on wood, the CTO.
10?
Yeah, I mean, because, it's hard, but in 25 years, but this one, now we're, I think, going 8-9 years.
9 years.
Yeah, knock on wood, fantastic. And he's like really the kind of
you had spoken for 13, 14 years back and you had said that if you had to redo, then maybe you'll have a tech co-founder.
Yeah, that's really, I think, the right. Also, the other one is the soft issue, which you said. Who's going to be the one public facing is one, but also, raising money, doing all of that stuff. And who's the one who's inward? It has to fit with you naturally. So I think you naturally have to be like that. It can't be something which, you're forcing something. So I guess the struggles also, I don't know, so many partnerships are failing, so many founders are leaving, co-founders are leaving. I guess what's happening internally is then someone is forcing their way and maybe not taking others along.
I see to secure people, to secure and self-aware people. So if you're secure and self-aware, then you make things work. And somewhere I just don't think so. We focus on that in the...
I think socializing, taking a little extra time to take people along with your ideas, the big one, I think that's really important. Like you can decide, but then I think what might be happening in places is people decide and they act and they've gone ahead and either they genuinely forget to take someone along who's your co-founder, or if it's purposely, then it's very bad. Because then you're playing games. And we see this all the time happening, we read about it, but we see it on OTT, we see it.
We see in real life, we have seen so many in last 15 years.
Yeah, so I think that's totally wrong.
To me, I think
you got to take people along, you got to tell them why, and you got to, in your area, of course, have it, but it comes down to your DNA, it comes down to your values and how you're built. I don't think there's a textbook and you can't learn this. You can't say, oh, from today, I'm going to start doing this. No, it's either you are like that. So actually, if you wind back the clock and you go from the beginning, it's actually about how honest and transparent you have been from the beginning, about how much water you're in, kitne pani mein ho, or when the shit hits the fan, because some things you will know and the others may or may not know. But if you're not sharing it, then that's also a problem. Also, if these guys were putting in everything into the business, but they just weren't there in the beginning, then I think I'm being very stupid and unfair to not make them co-founders. Like, why? So it could be a little selfish to lock them in, but also people have aspirations. And I think as founders, we all need to know what are people's aspirations beyond money.
Yeah.
Is it recognition? Is it title? Is it this? And, it's simple. Why won't you share? Like, there's so much. If you're going to build this massive company, which is your dream, then more the merrier.
Yeah.
More the merrier.
Rajesh, you were the CFO, right? Angel investor, CFO, or CFO and then angel investor? First, tell me that.
That's a good one.
Yeah, interesting. No, I think the angel investment happened because of the circumstances, right?
Yeah,
the role that I was playing at that point in time was CFO role. And I was quite happy playing that role. Besides the fact that like I was just trying to explain that in a startup that let us say if you want to do one more thing and say, listen, this is the area that I can just take care of it because everyone else is busy, that it happens that also. And that happened to be operations for me later on as well. But I think the angel investment was because of the circumstances. I mean, it was just basically pooling in money and saying, whatever we can,
the baby capital.
do that and then, sort of make sure that we survive. And thankfully that period when it got over in 2005, then we had the new VC money and then we were sort of, on our way. But I think it was interesting to play that CFO role at that point in time because that was my
I want to understand your CFO to CEO journey. Again, very rare. To us, it seems more of a B2C. And of course, now you do B2B and you're a super app, super travel app. But that's a journey.
Yeah.
How from CFO to CEO?
No, I think it's an interesting one. But, for me, it wasn't that difficult. And let me just explain it to you. So before joining MakeMyTrip, when I was in AppTech I was doing, when I started my career, let's say after I passed out for my CA, I joined Voltas for a couple of years. I was finance role. Even back then, I used to be finishing my finance role in 2 hours and then I used to be on shop floor. I was in plant there because I wanted to learn more and more about business because, in large companies, by the way, you don't have more than 2 hours job. Like your own functional job. So I didn't have any. So I said, okay, let me just go to the plant and see how the switchgear plants are being built, right? So obviously inherent desire was there to learn more about the business. In AppTech, I actually switched to a business role. I used to again play a finance role only, but because I used to talk all the other business guys' language in the review meetings, maybe somebody picked it up. In fact, Ganesh, who was the CEO at that point in time, eventually offered me a business role to lead the North unit of one of the divisions for AppTech. So I had that experience and I was quite enjoying that. I wanted to make that shift. It was always the desire. So it came naturally to me. And then I had a dry run for a startup before MakeMyTrip happened. Right? And when MakeMyTrip, the need was at that point in time of finance. So that was my functional expertise. So I said, okay, fair enough, start with the CFO. And startup, you always know that there could be an easy and relatively easier than the large companies for you to be able to do anything different, right? So, but I think it was very interesting challenge, and it ended up at a milestone, which was very, very satisfying, right? So taking the company to public, from private to public, and that too listing in US was obviously very, very satisfying in terms of just completing that milestone and worked out quite well, so it was a successful IPO.
And one of the very few companies, no? I can't think of any.
We were the among the first internet companies in the US, right? So, and they were very happy. Like US market, when we actually went there and started talking about it, the whole ecosystem, the investors, they were very happy to see an internet company from India coming to US. Very, very happy. The model was known because we had Expedia there and we had the other global companies there. So it was easier for them to be able to relate with that business model. And that was, by the way, one of the biggest reasons for us to go to US than India. India wasn't ready at that point in time. Just the stock market ecosystem was not ready to accept internet companies because of the traditional way of evaluating companies, right? And now it's very different. In the last 5 years, it's very, very different. So that happened right after that. And by the way, I was looking after operations at that point in time, because when you have to just go IPO, you have to make the company ready, and IPO is one part of it. That's just the project part of it. But before that, you have to just make the company ready, right? So 2008-9, lot of work that happened to make sure that we make the economic model of the business in such a way that we have line of sight to profitability. Back then, we were profitable when we IPO'd actually. And part of that was operations. Like we used to have massive call center operations in-house. In 2008, 2009, we ended up doing back then it was a landmark deal, because now when you would look at the size of the call centers are huge. We used to, we
220 people.
225 people rebadged to IBM Daksh, right? So we fixed some of those basic fundamental things on the economic business model before we took a company to public. Now, a lot of that was business. If you did not have an understanding of the business, you will never be able to do it, frankly, right? So once that happened, and Mohit Kabra, who's the current CFO, he's joined in 2011, 12, early 12, 2 years after IPO, 12. And 13, I switched to the CEO role. So basically handed it over to him, and I moved to a CEO role for India at that point in time. And then started the business, and I didn't really have to. By the way, as part of the IPO exercise also, when you end up writing a prospectus for your company, all of that is business.
A lot of people, as businesses scale, it becomes very functional expertise sort of. And CEO is more of a horizontal role, right?
Actually, 2 points. And I think Rajesh was saying this, but I want to call it out that in a startup, and we were still young enough, so it's quite fungible. So if you're going to put your hand up, and he was like back office ops, so he'd also done that whole e-bookers role. So he knew that better than anyone. So it just goes naturally to you. Who puts their hand up? I always say early stage of startup, you need all-rounders. Specialization comes later. Now, of course, for finance, you do need a specialist. For marketing also, at some scale, you need a specialist, but the skills are still more generalist. Finance, not anyone can do. And then CTO, you need a super specialist, obviously. But I think that was one. And then secondly, in the US, when you actually list, the CFO is almost deputy CEO. And so you'll see a lot of American companies, CFOs become CEOs because their grasp on the levers of the business is really, really good. So, and of course, and I think the X factor is people skills. So he's a rare CFO where I think actually he's a core people's person, HR. So there's no one with more patience internally.
You can look at him only. And
I run out of patience with people even when then, and I'd pick up and say, Rajesh, please, help me out. Please help her, or please talk to him or her. I am capped out because I spent an hour and I'm done because I have something else and I can't do maybe more than that. And he said, don't worry. And he might spend 2 hours late at like 9 o'clock at night, and then he'll drop a message, it's sorted. So all the tough appraisals eventually went to him because I think he would take care of hurting a lot of people's feelings, which I had hurt probably.
No.
Trust me.
Okay.
Trust me, I'm more cut and dry about that.
And today, for all the CFOs and people with finance background, there is a path to being a CEO.
No, absolutely. And you have to make that choice. See, and there's nothing wrong with just going the vertical and then grow vertically also, if you want to be like that. If you don't want to be like that, then you will have no choice but to sort of take initiative, learn other things and all of that. And I think it comes naturally. It is not, by the way, maybe back in the days, you would see a lot of straitjacketed functional experts, not anymore. There are people who are absolutely, not only showing skills, but also desire and the risk appetite for them to be able to go out of the comfort zone. In fact, in MakeMyTrip, one of the things that we also like is people moving from one particular function to other function, if a person is interested. Because you will be able to, a lot of it is first principle, you will be able, unless, real hardcore technical expertise required. I mean, the roles where hardcore technical expertise required, rest of the stuff, like up to a certain stage, the CFO is very functional. Let's say you have to just make sure that, your P&L and the balance sheet and the audit stuff and the controls, etc., etc. But lot of the other stuff is, when it comes to strategy, it's actually he or she plays a very big role in terms of just shaping up the strategy today.
Also, this moving point, Rajesh, what we have seen now, not your example, but others who are ready to move, come, after a few years, we see it as a great sign. Both of us, we always say that's a secure sign. That's a person who's very confident, secure, also who has trust in you. Like, listen, you got my back. So I've done really well. We'll only give those opportunities to someone who's done really well in that thing and say, why won't you do something else? And, because why didn't? So people will put their hand up and say, yeah, sure, why not? And that's great, because that's people who are interested in self-development.
Yes.
Versus others, no, this is what I know.
Curious
and by the way,
people.
they're curious people. There are people who will say, no, I don't want to move out of this. So it's I think it tells you something about the kind of person.
Well, in tomorrow's world, everyone might have to learn AI.
Oh yeah, today's world only we all have to learn.
But I'm just saying, I mean, so it is good.
We'll all become prompt engineers.
Prompting at the minimum. English is the new programming language.
MakeMyTrip has done a phenomenal job from the outside, again I'm saying, in terms of integrating the brands, and RedBus exists as a brand. Tell us about that. How have you managed to do it?
Exists and thrives, Okay, I'll take a quick crack.
Absolutely.
Actually, it's not been easy. We've also failed. There have been many in the past which you haven't heard. They're all reported. Smaller ones, luckily. Luckily, the mistakes were small in terms of capital and time spent, but the learning was great. And one of the biggest learning was, if you want to make M&A work, you have to be very clear why you're doing it, not to prop up and not to make the numbers look better because you're slowing down this thing. If you've done that, it'll come and bite you in the back. Secondly, is there real synergy you can find with Mothership? If there's a real synergy, and third and most importantly, who's going to drive that synergy? It cannot be driven from Mothership alone. It has to be someone in the acquired entity, merged entity, whatever. Either that founder is happy to stay on, which is seldom. People typically, if you sell, you want to move on after a while, which is fine. But then who is going to be your person who will make that happen? So who is, I call it Karta Dharta of that unit? Who's going to say this is going to happen? Wherever we were not clear about 1, 2 or 3, we failed. Wherever we were clear about 1, 2 and 3, it worked. So in the big Goa Bibo RedBus one, for Goa Bibo, we rolled up our sleeves and said, we have to make this happen. It's huge. It was very expensive for us. And RedBus, we just had a great team. We had Prakash, who's still CEO, Prakash Sangam, and we had Anup, who was CTO, who's still CTO. They're just running their culture is very lovely, and they run it like that. I think they just have oversight, support. Now they're profitable too, but whenever they needed the money, etc., all of that is there, and we have synergies. But I think you've got to find people who will put their hand up and say, look them in the eye that I'm going to make this happen and I want to make this big and I believe in this story. So I think if you have that, and if it's a remote one where it's not in the same place where you have a major office, then you have to post someone there. Whenever we've tried this whole visiting salesman, traveling salesman, fail.
RedBus is in Bangalore still,
but that team was there and they run it from there. But the guy who's running it, the 2 people who run it are in Bangalore. But let's say we had done a couple of acquisitions in a different location. We had done one, I remember way back in the day, there was something in Thailand for the Thai market. And we were doing it by someone traveling from here. It fails. You've got to be someone there morning, evening, with the people, taking the team along. That thing just fell apart. And we actually ended up really, I think, wasting a lot of time and energies on it. And all the failures, we can see that's the reason why.
Deep, don't you think these learnings come only by doing it?
Almost. But now I think the playbook's clear. Now this is the question to ask. How long is founder there? Founder's got earnout of 3. We normally like this 3-year earnout kind of thing. Okay. So after 1 year only, introduce someone who founder likes, we like, who will take over. It'll be very clear. That's one part of the KRA of the earnout. Groom the next person who's then going to be there. Worked very well for us for corporate. We bought a company called Quest to Travel in Bombay. We found the right guy well before the founder exited, took over seamlessly, now completely make more changes. And I think it's okay for founders to go unless they want to stay on, like young founders want to stay on. And some will tell, some are like in progress right now. Savari founders with us, fantastic guy. And hopefully he wants to build the future of Savari and road transportation with us. So we'll find out.
Inorganic growth was part of the DNA from early on?
Not really. I think it's a thing which is, you don't plan, I think, this. I think the opportunity, firstly, you need a balance sheet. When you get the balance sheet, then you get tempted sometimes. We've made some mistakes. But I think some have been, crying out loud and, really, really screaming in our face that, listen, this makes so much sense. Some we've been forced to do. So Goa Bibo and all was a classic one where, there's 100% privately owned by Naspers, discount. We are public. We have one hand tied behind our back fighting. It's really hard. And eventually you either ruin your P&L and you're answerable to the market, they're not, or you do something. So that was our then creative solution to the whole thing. And we said, okay, then let's make that move. And that's what we did. So yeah.
No, absolutely. No, at the end of the day, I mean, and again, hindsight, some of it, right, sometimes, but it has to flow from your strategy, whether it is organic expansion or inorganic. And if it doesn't fit into the broader strategy, then you rather not do it. And Goa Bibo is an example. It was not necessarily, at least at that point in time, part of our strategy. I don't think we were ready as an organization for market consolidation. Because of the market. And that also, by the way, it's important for you to be sort of also be flexible enough to tweak your strategy in a way that if you have a circumstances and you have to solve for it, because at the end of the day, you have to solve for a problem that is right there, right? You can't shy away or run away, right? So then you tweak your strategy and say, maybe this is the best solution and let's just go with it. Even if we were not necessarily ready or it was not necessarily at the first place part of our strategy. But then when you get into it, you have to make sure that you make it work, right? Because it was a huge one for us. And for making it work, signing off check is always easy, but making it work is the hardest part, right? Because doing a deal is no big deal, to be honest. But how do you make it work?
Not make it a bad deal.
Yeah, not
for
make
both
it a
the
bad deal.
sides. Yeah.
At the end of the day, you have some defined goal for the business when you make the deal.
Yeah.
Right? And how do we make sure that we end up achieving? Right? It's like sales versus execution. I'll go and do the sale, but if I have to also, if I'm not responsible for fulfillment, somebody else has to do the fulfillment, or I'm not worried for fulfillment, then it doesn't really play out from long-term standpoint, right? So I think those are some of the important things or the important learnings that we've also had. So what we see even now in the recent sort of investments that you see, each one of them is actually a fit, either a product. So the recent one is HapPay, for example. Yeah. Now, because we got into a corporate business, doing really well already, growing 40% year on year, we thought it'll be a very good sort of extension of another product or service that we can offer to the captive audience that we already have. We already have travel services product, we can have the expense management product. So it was a very, very direct fit. Right, and then we made sure that we end up sort of going after it and made that investment. Now we have to make sure that we scale it up. Similarly, Savari, as Deep was mentioning, intercity cab is a great opportunity.
I think you have a book in this, like M&As, how to, because globally, if you look at it, there are not many successful case studies.
Yeah.
Even small ticket size or big ones, whichever you've acquired, worked or not worked. I think there's a global book in this.
80% of M&A, you're right, that's the stat. They fail. We learned this in MBA and everything. And I think they fail because of cultural integration. No one spends time. Excel, you can make everything look cool and sexy. PPTs can always look good at this thing. But to make it work, you've got to, the companies are about people, right? Unless you are buying formulas and or you're buying a brand.
Or
so classic FMCG, or you're buying a patent, you're right. FMCG, you're buying a brand, you have your distribution channel, you just want these brands, but you're using the same CNF agents, the same retailers, but you've added to your brand. That's a different kind of strategy. In our business, that people think they'll just fall apart. All these businesses are actually very fragile if you don't have the key people around it. If people walk out, many businesses will fall apart.
New age culture, good infrastructure, everything you got it right from the beginning. How?
I don't think we got it right from the beginning. It just looks good now. But yeah, I think we took a lot of pain.
At least last 15 years.
Yeah, I don't think we ever took shortcuts, honestly, when it comes to regulatory or stat stuff. That's just not in our DNA. We really didn't, because that would have otherwise blown up. But we definitely took shortcuts when it came to spend and frugality. I think frugality definitely drives a lot of innovation. So we did a lot of jugaad, a lot of hustle. There was so much hustle in that earlier period that I think it kind of made us quite strong and tough for the tougher times ahead. So when we had the domestic airline, I remember Kingfisher collapse and there was other chaos going on in the market, we were pretty calm and cool through it because we realized that, listen, you're not going to solve anything by flipping out. We used to flip out. I used to freak out a lot in the early days. So I think I did my quota of freaking out. And I realized the solution will only come. And Rajesh was always a very calming experience. I think the rest of the even Keyur, Sachin were more like very excitable and all. But then over time, we realized this is not going to solve any issues if you don't. So in COVID, business collapsed overnight, right? You were khatam. There was no travel for a quarter. And we were public. And it was just a nightmare that way. But balance sheet was there. And B, there was a sense of calm. We'll come out of this. Let's do the right thing. Okay, this has happened. Let's accept it first and let's do the right. So I think a lot of this stuff you see has been built painfully. Also, I think on people decisions, we take a lot of time to get people on. So I think we get, again, more right than wrong. But when we get people wrong, then I think we take the call also pretty soon. It's not like we linger on very long. If someone's not working out, have the conversation, marginalize them, hopefully make them quit. Because if they're nice people, but they're just not fitting in, they're not really their fault. Yeah. So then I think we moved that and all. So I think most of our conversations now, at one time they were about money and investors and raising. Now they're only about people and people and people because, it's at that scale. We're at 10 billion gross revenue run rate, 1 billion revenue run rate, probably the most profitable, I think, internet company in the country. So now you really want people to lead. We call them SBUs one way or the other, strategic business units. Support from top, but then who's leading, who's taking that forward? And obviously last couple of years, Rajesh, I don't think he's doing it alone. We have phenomenal head of HR, CHRO and others, but we're always bouncing ideas. But that's what occupies, and that's the job of a CEO. Because he's not expected to do many things himself. You just put the right people in place, enable, empower, and just support, help them. And if they make a mistake, it's okay so long as they did the right thing. So I think that kind of entrepreneurial engine we want to try to perpetuate it. Because otherwise we'll lose our mojo. Otherwise we'll become a big company.
While you have this growth, this kind of scale, with that, having the right culture and focusing on people, how do you balance that?
I don't think the observation might be off. I mean, there could always be a tendency to go either slow or complacent or go off on your culture or values and so on. But you know what, and maybe we've been lucky, what we've been trying to do, and I think that's what Deep was trying to explain. See, one, of course, a lot of it is to not necessarily always keep saying it, but, literally leading by example. Walking the talk, So over the years, if you have seen, not only, let's say, Deep and I or the other co-founders, but also the leadership team, right? Also sort of takes it, because our leadership team, by the way, is fairly tenured. Yeah. A lot of them are actually 12 years, 13 years, some 10 years, some 8, 9 years, right? So they've been in the system for so many. We've been lucky with some of the previous leaders also who spent 10 years with us. Mohit used to be with us for 10 years, moved to Zomato after that. So we've been sort of lucky at the top, people who would be excited to work, they would probably would be the same sort of DNA and the value system and ready to sort of take it then forward, right? Because it can't just be only one or two guys who would be doing it. But two important points there. One is that you have to lead by example and walk the talk always consistently, not just only in one review meeting or other thing. I mean, in your day-to-day stuff, right? You have to keep coming across as you truly believe in some of those values and culture. And then you build the team around you who are also, who also believe in it, right? So because then it percolates down and so on. I think then the other thing is also about some of the people practices that you do practice, right? I'll give you, I mean, the difficult times will always give you probably the proof of that pudding, right? So, during COVID, what happened? I mean, of course, we felt in it because business was really, really badly hit. And Deep and I both went out and said we would be, on zero salary. But guess what? We had other volunteers, like hundreds of volunteers. The leadership team, of course,
that's such a touching thing.
Oh, it was really goosebumps.
Yeah,
it was so many people put their hands up to take cuts.
They took cuts, right? Yeah. And and for us, and what was even more heartening was that as we recovered out of it, right? And that is something that you would, if you don't end up sort of practicing and again lead by example, walking the talk, then may not, sort of last long, right? Because then it becomes just maybe one activity. When we had recovered, we had a little bit more business coming back and so on. We made sure, and again, we had this conversation with our HR head and some of the leaders, and no one really was expecting. There were sacrifices that were made, which were the cuts that they had taken, were already taken in the spirit of this thing that, yes, we believe in brand, we believe in value, we will make it up future, etc. Some of them were stock owners as well. But as an organization, we took a call that we will return all that what they had taken the cuts on as one sort of payment of ex gratia to them, right? Now that went a long, long way, just the gesture. I don't think the money mattered a lot, right?
But wow,
But it
wow.
was
like I just have to take a pause to say, wow.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know about this.
No, I think we obviously, just shared it with board and maybe this thing, but it was very, actually for us, it was easy for us to say we'll take the cut, but the number of people at the senior level, they said, no, we're in this together, we can do this, we'll take cuts and then. So it felt good, and I think we do. I think our culture is one of our biggest strengths.
Yeah.
And that's what at 25 years one can say, that to build a company this lasting, actually it's also the culture. It's one of the
I think
key.
It's got to be something like that, because why would people like this tenure part? Good people staying on long, there's so many options they have. Everyone's got so many options, and actually people will tell in lighter, some will come immediately and say, I got an inbound call from here. And some will come later and tell Rajesh or me that, oh yeah, the so-and-so was reaching out and all of that. So it's good. One or two of our partners have said, very senior guys in hotel industry have told us, listen, our headhunters got us this and we said we won't touch. And then the candidate apparently also said that we don't even want to be entertained. But headhunters have to do their job, right?
Yeah.
They have to find, so.
Just in last year, just to one more sort of additional data point, very interesting, and just in the context of this conversation, we have about 45 people who worked with us in the past have come back and joined us again.
Yeah.
Wow.
45
Boomerang
people.
I call it Ghar Wapsi, they call it boomerang. Yeah.
So,
Wow.
and that means that speaks volumes about it, and it's only about the practices, and it's not about one person doing it.
Pandemic was a very tough time. Being true to your DNA, to your values, what did that do for you? I love this, what Jensen Huang has said, that pain and suffering is very essential to building a company, to building who you are. And MakeMyTrip went through a lot of pain and suffering. How did it change the DNA? How did it change the organization?
I think the empathy factor was huge there, right? Someone was always suffering at a very personal level. Forget business going down 96%. Businesses come back. It's come back stronger. It took 3 years, a part of it. In a weird sort of way, Shraddha, that helped us. Because it helped us restructure our costs, make our fixed costs even lighter. So if you see our fixed costs have been coming down, but now we're very focused on that. Variabilized costs, because that fixed cost is a killer, right?
Yes.
So I think Mohit, Rajesh took that on board. Like, we have to bring this down. I think people were suffering and we were spending probably half our time just helping out folks on whatever we could do because we had more resources. Company wanted to help. The kind of work our folks did, we had a whole team, a crack team of just helping people and their families in need, mainly the families.
Yeah.
We're still, our average age is 27 or so. So it was the families, but in some cases there were even people's spouses. And all, and self. So all kinds of shit was happening to everyone in the country. I think also for us to keep our people gainfully employed, like especially our techies whose skills were so fungible and they wanted to fly because travel is down, kahin aur chale jate hain. So we had to do, so Rajesh actually had a whole slew of projects he should talk about, which today have become a lot of new businesses and contributing. Some of them contributing crazily, like the whole ad tech business, like this thing was born in COVID. So it was a COVID child. And then we kept people busy, a whole bunch of people with Arogya Setu, which we built during that time for, really for the country. It was our give back and we built that
MakeMyTrip built Arogya Setu.
Entire, like 20% team. So it was all kinds of stuff. So I think it taught us a lot. It was also very humbling to realize overnight you can come down from whatever revenue market cap to zip. It's all over. So it also shows that we are vulnerable. travel is vulnerable. Anything can happen at that time. Also, people said when we were coming out, corporate travel to kabhi nahi hoga, sab Zoom pe hoga. You know, now all those things change so fast because it takes one company, or offsites will not happen.
We are traveling more, I think, now.
Yeah, leisure people said we'll do, but corporate people said, why Zoom is this thing? And then culture also was falling apart because we were hiring on this two-dimensional screen and people didn't feel the culture. So people who joined during COVID also left very soon, or really only started realizing the company much later. And therefore, the work from home business, I'm not a big fan of it. Do it by exception when you really need to. But by culture, I don't think it's a great idea. You never really build, because we are big on culture. I don't think you build those ties. I know in Bangalore it's hard. You spend 4 hours on the, in traffic to come in every day.
But you can't build culture out of
You can't. So at max, you can be flexible with, I think, 1 day or something like that. And then also, I think managers should come in. And then only work will happen. If the manager comes in, manager's response. I like what our CHRO just said last week. He said, we make a big deal out of it. Do we know such a large percentage of people work from home quietly? And whenever managers ask us, or heads of teams, the answer is, it's up to you. If you can get work out of people, please do it. But, don't ask us, is there a culture? There's no policy. You want to work from home, it's up to you how much you're going to get. Like Rajesh, hopefully we need more than 2 hours of work, unlike Voltas or some other day. But yeah, where you do it from once in a while. But your default has to be at work. As an exception, you could be, and I think that's, but I
resilience. Resilience during pandemic. It built resilience, it built innovation.
Oh my God. Absolutely. That was a big one. Definitely.
Yeah, no, I think in many ways it was a massive reality check for everyone as well, right? Because,
you had a momentum and you suddenly gone.
Exactly. We had momentum. We were very close to turning profitable completely. We, having dealt with the post-merger, having worked really hard to make the merger work, and then fix the business, market dynamics change, beginning or had begun to change. Our cost structure was falling in place and we were turning profitable, and this hell broke loose, right? So, and then it was just a question of, it was obviously heartbreaking at some level. Because we were so close and then we became suddenly so far, right? So, of the situation. So we had to rebuild it. But what has helped over the last few years of dealing with mini crisis, that I don't think we were panicking, right? We didn't really panic. Thankfully, it wasn't an existential crisis for us. That was also thanks to the past learnings. We had money on the balance sheet. The learning was that you should always have some war chest, right? And then during COVID, we actually raised some more phenomenal deal that Mohit did at a zero coupon, sort of debt. So it wasn't existential, that helped. But still, it was like sizable business, sort of coming down to naught. So you had to just go back into that mindset and saying, panic won't help you. You have to just deal with the situation, confront it. And I think that is what we ended up doing. And you fix the, start the journey of rebuilding it, fix the cost structure, whatever opportunities. Actually, the tough times always, I think Deep was alluding to, of course, it will be very, very difficult for you, but it also presents you many opportunities if you want to use that lens for that during that time. And we started seeing, thankfully for us, to life beyond pandemic. What would it mean? And what is that we are going to lose right now? And was the time that we are going to lose? And, when we come out of it, can we utilize this time and opportunity and the resources in hand for us to be able to build future products, new platforms, new avenues of revenue, and so on. And we ended up doing multiple projects, right? So and that also kept people busy, all right? Because otherwise they were also distracted, and the insecurity was creeping in, right? Because people were thinking, and people were saying, why should we work with travel company and stuff like that?
Especially travel company, that sector will, like I had done so many interviews, and travel will come last, or travel will it come the way?
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, the other belief also got validated, and I used to say that in many forums, and everything was online at that point in time, that let's wait and watch. I can tell you, we've seen it in the past, that the public memory is so short that people are going to forget about it like nobody's business. Which is exactly what happened, right? I mean, and people were traveling, and now COVID, of course, will come in the history books and the reference, and we will refer to it. But, and people are just back in the business,
But
right?
in your 25 years of MakeMyTrip journey, not just surviving pandemic, but coming out of it stronger. I think that is also equally a very strong milestone.
Yeah, no, it is. And, and a lot of the credit should go to people, to be honest, like the team, because it's not only us, the team was at it and they believed in it, and, and they did not jump the ship, right?
Yeah.
And they worked on it, and they'll say this will also pass, and then let's see, and then as
So
the
Rajesh,
recovery
I will,
happens.
as you said, I would say, give credit to the leaders. They have walked the talk.
Yeah,
you can't, if you have the right people to see and leaders to observe, then yeah.
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, and the leaders are part of the team. See, if you are just in difficult times, you come together and just, work together. Magic happens. I mean, and that's exactly what happened. And then you got to be, obviously, right time at right place, luck plays a role, etc. A lot of that thing happens. A lot of those things also happen. But it worked out well. I mean, the good news is that, that's behind us and we are looking ahead.
Because of MakeMyTrip, how have you evolved?
I think for me, the biggest one would be just gratitude is my biggest feeling. I mean, honestly, couldn't ask for a better, better journey. It's just been fantastic, better than, and always one can say a little bit here, a little bit faster, this, slower, whatever, but no. And end of the day is just a lot of gratitude for the joy it's given in many, many ways. Just the satisfaction, building something which we are proud of. I don't think the journey is done. We'll come to that. I think we still, but it's given a lot of satisfaction on all counts. And, also I think given a lot of relationships and friendships. So I've made friends for life through MakeMyTrip, which is amazing. I mean, if you think about it, we all make friends in school and college, and, I'm very rich in friends, very thankful for that. But made a lot of friends at work, which are now as good as any of my
friends.
Yeah, which is just amazing. Like, so if you think about it, what could be more? And for me, coming to work is still like, now I go in much less, but it's always just actually a lot of fun. The only part of my job I've not liked is, I always say, was investor marketing, because you just repeat yourself a lot, and then, that was painful. And appraisals. I think there were just two things I don't really enjoy, but everything else is fun.
Rajesh?
Not very different, to be honest.
Don't pick
I'll tell you.
again.
I'm not trying to bring gratitude, but I'll tell you, personally, what sort of helped me over the years. See, there is, when you do a startup, there is obviously, when you're trying to build a business and you want to get that business to a particular scale and size, and all your stakeholders becoming really happy that you've delivered value for them. Otherwise, how are you, what are you building business for? And when I say stakeholders, your partners, your people, your investors, and everybody else, right? And over so many years, that journey was only becoming longer and longer. And in patches, achieving some sort of milestone in phases, we were able to deliver the value, but something was missing along these years. And we were very close to see that happening just before COVID, and then COVID made it even more longer, which means that what we are talking about today, right? So MakeMyTrip is 25 years today. People are looking up to this business very differently. That long-term sustainable business, you build value for consumers, institution, profitable, and so on and so forth. But it wasn't the case 3 years ago. It wasn't the case 4 years ago. So 21 years. So I think that part that was missing was always bothering. That till you get to that stage, the job is not finished, right? So once you get to that stage, and then and it was, we call it deferred gratification or late. I think you were alluding to earlier part of the conversation. Maybe the ecosystem recognition less, but maybe the market recognition came in much later.
Yeah.
But it came in later when the business turned around, right? So I think that was the most satisfying part, for me personally. Just the sense of saying, okay, finally we are getting there, right? So so it's not
finally the world is seeing what you always set out.
Exactly. But and for all these years, that wasn't really the case, right?
A lot of validation of what one has been building,
right?
So
I think it's very satisfying from that, and it also makes you feel even more humble
That
in
really
many
stands
ways.
out about you,
Right.
by the way.
No, well, I don't know. No, but I'm saying, I mean, it's true, whether it's COVID and all of that, right? When you see so much pain in the world, then obviously
So much pain only brings humility.
yeah, always,
Yeah.
right? So, no, I think that is really, and hopefully over the 25 years of learning would have made you a little bit more wiser, I would have thought. So, that you would not end up making the same mistakes again, effectively.
What is the agenda for the next 25? And if you could take us through some of the impact numbers for the next 25, because we as Indians would root for Make My Trip and hope to see you globally become number one.
No, and firstly, again, I mean, and you being super, super kind with all the words, the kind words that you've been saying for all this while. So thank you for that. Um, and like we say internally as well, that best is yet to come, and we truly mean it. And the reason why we say that is, it actually starts from where India is today. The macro situation for India as compared to the rest of the world is very, very, sort of positive right now. I think we are very well poised as a country. In many ways, I mean, of course, the country is growing. We have demographic dividend. We have infrastructure investments. We have rising income. We have disposable income. Specific to travel, consumer behavior and habit is changing to spend more and more. Globally true, people are spending more portion of their disposable income into travel and experiences, and not necessarily buying products, share economies, or I don't want to own assets. I'm happy to sort of share and rent and spend more on travel experiences, etc. And Gen Z is changing, rising middle class is changing the behavior. All of these are actually very, very good positive factors that is going to help India shape the future for India for the next 25 odd years or more. And similarly, therefore, the businesses working out of India, including travel, are going to definitely get benefit out of it. So that's like a macro long term. I mean, you will have short term cycles, etc. I'm not bothered about that, because now the cycles are
And you've seen enough cycles.
we've seen enough, and they are increasing, and they are coming in faster than we think, and they're short. Right. So I think that all of that has to become BAU. If wars are becoming BAU these days in today's world, then a lot of these some of the uncertainty and some of these cycles have to become part of the BAU as well. So keeping that aside, I think long-term outlook looks positive. From MakeMyTrip specifically, the way we are looking at it, the platform that we build, the businesses, we have multiple brands, and the focus we've gone into the GCC market as well. It's a twofold strategy. One, core market is India, it will continue to be India. There are many new investments that we've made, whether it's a corporate business or an intercity or building ancillary businesses or scaling up ancillary businesses like Forex, the visa, the alternative accommodation. The international outbound is a huge opportunity. RedBus playbook that we've taken to some of the international countries as well. So we've got enough on our plate which will help us drive higher rate of growth than the industry. So, that is what at least directionally we think that we should be able to, even at a higher base, be able to achieve. So if industry is growing, travel and tourism industry is growing at X, we will grow definitely higher rate than that. And I think the other aspect of that, which is also coming, and again, not because it's the buzzword, but it is real, is going to be the AI in technology, right? So that's going to be transformational. That is there's a lot of sort of power in that technology that we can sort of leverage on the application side. And we've started our journey about a year ago. We want to double down on that, on investments, specifically focusing on the areas that could just completely change the experience for the consumers, also enhance productivity internally, right? So on technology, I think that is a new era that is coming up that we will have to invest behind. We had the smartphone era, now we will have this, new era, powered by AI. Frankly, it keeps you on your toes, right, all the time. Because
Rajesh, don't you think AI would be like there have been some headwinds and tailwinds for different industries? AI is actually going to be the tailwind for travel industry because you have so much of data. And you can make the user now with AI do so much.
The bigger opportunity than threat for sure.
No, absolutely. No, it's a huge opportunity. But at the same time that you will also have, because it's very fast paced, right? And you will also have new innovations coming from some corner that you got to be careful about. But if you're not necessarily able to see it and then invest behind it, then you would lose the power of data that you have. Right? So you got to be. And when you're incumbent and you're a market leader and you're a reasonable large size company, that becomes one of the risk elements, right?
You're aware. See, I said self-aware people, so that should not be a
I hope
problem.
so. I hope so. No, all of us have to really work harder. Because any new area, new technology, new thing that comes to the market, there is always a lot of crowd and a lot of attention that it gets. So you got to be obviously keep up the pace with all of that and make sure that you stay ahead, you keep investing in the right areas and make the difference with the differentiation that you have, which is the data that you rightly pointed out, and then keep on sort of delivering to make sure that you stay ahead of the curve.
Very quickly, rapid fire. Describe MakeMyTrip in one word.
My baby.
I'll take the consumer angle. I'll say Google for travel.
Your proudest moment at MakeMyTrip?
I think we spoke about it. There are many, many proud moments that are there. I don't know how to put it in one word now.
I guess the IPO was a milestone, but somewhere I think this 25 year and the kind of last year, I think right now might be the one.
One rookie mistake from your early entrepreneurial days?
Yeah, I think starting alone was clearly, if I look back, it was just quite foolhardy.
I think getting trigger happy and going out for shopping after IPO was a rookie mistake.
What did you say? Sorry.
Buying companies, basically. M&A buying companies.
Okay, we have to look at the companies.
Shopping.
They're all declared in our reports. Most of them are dead, clearly. These ones are
just one or
expensive mistakes.
Next 25 years of MakeMyTrip.
That we stay as relevant or better for our consumers as we are today.
The golden era, from silver jubilee to the golden era.
Good one to end. Thank you so much. This was
Thank you. Really enjoyed. Thanks for coming down for this.